Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. If this is your first time here, then as always, it is good to see you and I hope you're going to stick around. Okay, well, welcome to our midweek video. Again, those of you who follow the channel will probably know, normally I look to upload 2 videos a week. We do one midweek, normally on a Wednesday. That would normally be gameplay related. And at the weekend, we normally do studio videos, which we look at all sorts of things in our glorious and wonderful sport and hobby that is Airsoft. From replica to gear, tech, everything in between. And today is going to be a little bit different. As I mentioned, we normally do gameplay on a Wednesday, but the gameplay footage I had from the last game I was at a couple of weeks back, the remaining footage I had wasn't really what I'd be happy with. So I thought, well, I won't subject you to that. And instead, we'd have a studio video, as we did last week. And this week, we're in a little bit different settings. Again, those of you who follow the channel will know that this is my command centre, as I like to call it. This is where I keep all of my gear, all my replicas, all of my stuff, basically. And sometimes we'll do short videos here, just looking at various Airsoft related stuff. So with that out of the way, that's why we're here. We're in the command center for our midweek video and we're doing a quick video this Wednesday. This one has come as a request that I had in a comment on a previous video. Somebody was asking about BB weights and wanted me to do a video on different BB weights. Now, I don't know if you guys would recall, but I did do quite a lengthy video about the hop-up system, how it works, how to make it better, a lot of information on there, and I also covered BBs and a lot of details about BBs. But I thought we'd do this quick short one about different weights, and then if any of you guys are the new starters or just getting into the sport and not sure what all this weight business is all about, give you a little bit of ammunition to reliably choose a BB weight. So looking at BBs first of all, this, as you might recognise, is a BB. Boring? Yep, not as exciting as looking at replicas and things like that, but still vastly important. So before we go into the weights, very quickly, when you're getting BBs, I can't stress this enough, don't cheap out on your BBs, guys. Get good quality BBs. The main thing is that you want your BBs to be spherical, as in round, a ball. And believe it or not, guys, some of the cheaper BBs or bad batches of BBs, these things end up being oval, or they have little lumps on them, things like that. All things that can create problems in your replica. I'll not go into too much detail, but ultimately they can jam up in your barrel and you end up having to unjam it. But worse than that, they can cause damage because of those jams if you keep pulling the trigger. There's various things you can do, ripping hot rubbers, shattering BBs. There's all sorts of bad things with cheap BBs, guys. So stick to good quality, well-known brand BBs. The next thing is whether you're going to be using biodegradable BBs or whether you're going to be using non-biodegradable BBs. You'll have heard them called bio BBs. At my home site at Tazball Airsoft, we are only allowed to use bio BBs. So most of my experience is based around bio BBs. Now you'll hear a lot of talk about bio BBs and them being worse than non-bio. I've never found that, to be honest. I've had no issues with good quality bio BBs, and you shouldn't either. As long as you get good quality bios, they should work just fine for you, and as long as you keep them in a sealed bottle, such as that one, then they aren't going to go off anytime soon. It takes a long time for them to swell and begin to degrade. It takes a very long time, guys. But don't get them wet and then put them away, obviously, because that'll speed up the degradation. If you're going for non-bio BBs, you've got a lot of choices there and you don't have to worry about the effects of degradation, okay? So check what your site allows, but if it allows bio only, then not an issue. They still work absolutely fine. If you can use whatever you want, then the choice is yours, whether you use non-bio or bio. And the way to tell if they're bio, guys, it usually tells you on the packaging that they're a bio BB, and then you know they're going to degrade well over a few years. They swell up first, but it takes a long time, guys, so don't worry about that too much. Okay, so with that out of the way, we know now that you should get good quality BBs from a well-known manufacturer, and you also want to ensure that they are bio or non-bio, dependent on what's allowed on your site, and your personal preference if you're allowed to use whatever you like. The next difference really that you'll come across in the type of BB is ones like these. If you notice, they say tracer BBs. Tracer BBs work with tracer units. They're basically UV reactant and they glow. So your tracer unit will emit a light into those tracers, which will make them glow as they leave the tracer unit or leave your barrel, depending on where the tracer LED is mounted. But yeah, so they're a little bit more expensive usually because the tracer. But again, you can get them in bio and you can get them in non-bio and you can get them in different weights as well. So take your pick, guys, on whether you're going to be running tracers or not. Tracers work best, as you can probably imagine, in low light or dark conditions. So if you play a lot of indoor CQB or if you play outdoor night games or milsims, things like that, tracers work just fine, guys. With a good tracer unit, you'll be able to see them clear as anything. So with that out of the way, you've got your different types of BB. You know you want good quality BBs. Some of the brands that I use, I've recently started trying the Vorsk ones. They seem very good, guys. I've had no problems with them so far. I like the Amoeba Diamond Precision from Aries. They're very nice as well. I've even found that these Neutral RZR rounds are great as well. I've had no jams with those. You can use Jeffs. They're really good if you can get hold of those. The Vulcan ones are okay. Some brands can be funny with different replicas. Not very often. I've found that particular brands that I've not had success with, which I won't go into those, but the ones I've not had success with, they misfeed on a regular basis in near enough all of my replicas. So those three brands there, and Vulcan and Jeffs, I've had a lot of success with those. They've been really good. G&G BBs are really good as well. So pretty much any well-known brand BB, you should be okay. I know they're all made in only about 3 different factories. However, it's the quality control and the amount of after prep they get that makes the difference. So good quality BBs, guys, and those are the reasons why. So quickly getting into weights, because obviously that was the question I were asked. Now, the weights of BBs, there are far more weights available these days than there used to be. Visibly looking at the BBs, you're not going to be able to tell the different weights, and it's very rare you'll be able to feel the difference in your hand. But what I would say is ignore 0.12 gram. They have no use at all unless you're using them in a gas grenade or a spring grenade, something that has reusable, refillable BBs for grenades. But I would start at a minimum of 0.2 gram. Now, as you can see, these tracers come in a number of rounds. You've got 0.2, 0.23, 0.25. You can also get 0.28 and 0.3 gram in the tracers. So that's some of the weights you've got to go with. 0.2 gram, guys, that is the bare minimum I would recommend these days for a weight of BB. But having said that, guys, 0.2 gram now is becoming below the minimum you would expect to use. 0.25 is pretty much where you want to be starting for any practical use in the skirmish field. Obviously there is dependencies on whether you're playing outdoor, indoor, and whether the weather is going to affect your BB's flight path. But we'll get into that in a second. So that's 0.2s, and then obviously here we've got 0.25s. The weight is normally written on the bottle, so you'll know what weight you're getting, or if you're ordering off a supplier, then obviously it'll be on there as well. Here we have some 0.32 grams, so obviously we're going heavier than's available in those tracers. We've got 0.32 grams there, and then these Vorsk ones are 0.4 gram. So you've got some different weights to go at. Now you can go all the way up to much heavier weights, guys, but there is a generalization that you can use for all weights of BB. Now, the underlying rule is you've got to do a bit of trial and error to see what your hop up can handle, and I would always recommend to use the heaviest BB that your hop up can successfully lift. And by lift, I mean it can bring it up and get the proper trajectory, which I'll put a link to the previous video I did on hop up, is specifically you want it to rise slightly and then drop off. So you want as straight a trajectory as possible to get the maximum range. With that in mind, when you're adjusting your hop up, keep applying hop to the weight that you've chosen. And once it's going at the flat trajectory, then you know you can lift those BBs. Try a heavier weight, guys. If it can still lift those and you're finding good results with the weight that you're on, then that's the weight to go with. But the general rules are, the lighter the BB, the faster it will travel, but the less energy it carries with it. So that is why on an AR replica, for example, where you're going full auto, you can use lighter rounds if you're going to be getting in close, and their time to target is much quicker, so the guys can't dodge out of the way of the BB as easily at range. However, lighter BBs, because they carry less energy, are more affected by foliage, leaves, that type of thing if you're playing outdoors, and they're also more affected by the wind. So if it's a windy day, they'll veer off course much more easily than a heavy BB, and they also don't hit the target as hard either. And generally with a lighter BB, you're not going to get quite as much range as you would with a heavier BB. However, it'll get to its maximum range much more rapidly. So if range really isn't an issue and you're mainly playing close quarters, I don't personally see any reason why you'd need to go any heavier than a .25. I find that when I'm playing in the woodland and I'm using an assault based replica or pistols, I tend to go with .25s because I like to get in close when I'm playing. The range that I get with the .25s is more than enough for long range engagements, but maybe not quite as accurate as a heavy BB. And you've also got to look at cost, because as the weight goes up, generally the cost goes up, guys. You'll pay a little bit more for BBs for the heavier ones than you will for the lighter ones, which is why these 0.4 gram, for example, come in a much smaller bottle and are much more costly. But 0.4 and up is what you tend to use in your snipers or your DMR. Now 0.4 gram BB will carry the maximum range, but obviously in a sniper, because you're using higher power, you're firing at 500 feet per second, let's say, it has the power to fire that at the speed you want, but also the weight of it imparts the energy and it can travel much further. However, again, in your snipers, you're going to have much more sophisticated hop systems normally, if you've spent the time and effort setting them up, and obviously you'll be able to lift 0.4 or heavier gram BBs. So in snipers, I would say that a minimum you want to be looking at is 0.4 gram and up, and for assault variants or for close quarters or anything like that, 0.25 would be the minimum I'd recommend. I've found that they work absolutely perfectly. But again, you've got all the weights in betweens. Now, I know a lot of my friends at Tazball, they tend to run 0.28 to 0.32 gram BBs in their ARPs, for example, because the ARP is capable of lifting those weights of BB, and obviously it increases your maximum range slightly, increases the hitting force of the BB, so people have taken the hit, but more so that it can get through any foliage or loose twigs. Light stuff, it'll punch through those more effectively and maybe still get the hit on the target. So that's the advantage of the heavier BBs, but there is a trade-off, and like I said, that trade-off is cost. You're going to pay a lot more for a 0.32 gram BB than you are for a 0.25 gram BB. So if you're firing a lot of rounds, then obviously, you know, you're going to have a cost per how much extra performance it gives you trade-off. You know, it's whether you can justify that extra cost for maybe an extra few feet of range, or a little bit more consistency without it being blown off by the wind or foliage or anything like that. So that's it, guys. That's all there is to BB weights. Use the heaviest weight you can lift in your hop system. And if you don't want to pay the money for that heavy, because I mean, you might have an AR that will lift 0.4s. You don't want to be firing thousands of those off. It could get costly. Or maybe you do, guys. But if you can lift a 0.4, then obviously you can lift a 0.25 or a 0.3 and save yourself a bit of money and still get the middle ground on range and speed to target. So those are the main things to remember with weights, guys. But generally, find the heaviest BB you can lift, and if that's the performance you want, that's the weight to use. Or alternatively, if you want to save a bit of money, dial your hop down a bit, use a lighter BB. Now the only other thing I would say, guys, in some rare instances, if you've got a very high-end replica or you've spent a lot of time setting up your hop and barrel group and it won't work very well with lighter BBs. I've encountered it where guys are firing .25s and they're flying up into the air. Well, that's over hopping them, guys, and that's with the hop up turned all the way down. In those instances, the easiest way to sort that is use a heavier BB, and then obviously you'll get the range. But in those cases, you know, you're going to get the trade-off in cost, but you are going to get amazing range if it can hop that effectively. So that's about it, guys. There isn't really a whole lot to weights. People can go into it a lot, but the main thing to remember with BBs is good quality, so that you're not having any jams or mechanical issues, and you get more consistency because the weights are more balanced. There'll be more consistent weight in the bottle. Each BB isn't going to be a different weight or size. So that's the main thing. And then with your weights, it's just a case of finding a weight that your BB, that your hop-up unit can successfully lift, and that gives you the range that you're after and the time to target you're after. And unfortunately, guys, the only way to find that is to experiment. So maybe start with 2.5s, and if they don't do it for you, then go up the weight range, and eventually you're going to get to a BB that your hop system can't lift. At that point, you could either upgrade your hop rubber, your bucking, your nub, or you could upgrade your hop unit itself or your barrel group. There's lots of upgrades you could do to be able to lift even heavier weights. Once you get into getting that maximum range and time to target, it can become a bit of a black hole. You could end up spending a lot of money, or you might get lucky and you have something that shoots great from the factory. So that's all there is to weights, guys. Lots of different ones to go from 0.2 all the way up to 0.5s, 0.6 for snipers. But if you're running an AEG and you're just running it as a standard assault duties, then I would say 0.25s in the majority of cases will be fine. Most AEGs these days will lift a 0.28. If you want to use 0.2s, that's fine. But really these days there's not a whole lot of advantage between 0.2s and 0.25s, because most AEGs will lift a 2.5, and the 2.5s are usually pretty much the same price as 0.2s, guys. The 2.8s don't jump up that much either. It's only when you get to 0.3s, 0.32s they're going to get a bit more expensive. So I hope that answered some questions about BB weights, guys. If you want more information on BBs in general and the hop system, I will put a link to my previous video, which is quite lengthy, but we go into detail about the hop-up system and over-hopping, under-hopping, all that type of thing. So I'll put a link to that in the description, then you can get a bit more information. If you have any questions about BBs, or about myself, or about Airsoft in general, then do drop a comment below, guys. Maybe let me know what weights you find work best for you, and I can try those out myself. I will always respond to a comment, guys. I might not get back to you straight away, but I will always respond. If you've been enjoying my series of videos, and as always, guys, do get subscribed to the channel. That way you're not going to miss any of my uploads. We'll have loads of other stuff coming in future videos. And apart from that, if you like this video, then please drop a like on it. That helps me out. And thanks very much for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one, guys.